Welcome, world, to Life, Love, and Wellness Global, a worldwide wellness movement. I am Reverend Sandy Rogers, and as the creator of this historic event, it is my pleasure to welcome you. We come together to bring you this historic event. We have practitioners, holistic practitioners. We have medical doctors. We have spiritual individuals. This event is so lovingly dedicated to my mother, Mrs. Barbara Dean Brown. And my mother taught me like 40 plus years ago about the importance and the meaning behind herbs. And she would always say, we don't know what they putting in those pills, so you better not, get hooked on prescription drugs. And so we listened to Mom, but not all of us paid attention. My sister, bless her heart, was diagnosed recently thereafter with asthma, and she was prescribed prednisone, which is a very powerful steroid. And my sister actually got hooked on steroids, like someone out on the street kind of hooked, like on heroin or crack or something like that. And so my mom and my sister are both on the other side, living in the other dimension, but they're upholding me, and this is dedicated to their memory. So we don't want to come and make you change your mind about what you're doing. We just want to provide information to you, something different, so that you have options to choose from, so that you're not stuck. Because the environment that we now live in, the fast foods, the toxins in the air that we breathe and in the water that we drink, and the processed foods, and all of that is causing havoc on this precious body temple. So God created our bodies to heal themselves, but they can only heal themselves when they're fed and they're nourished and they're stress-free. And so the 60 or so or more experts that we have are bringing you this worldwide wellness movement in an attempt to share their testimonies and their information with you. So we have from age 14 on up. I don't even know what the oldest age is. I think 88 or something. So you see, that's a wide range of knowledge that we're bringing you. And so we hope that you come and that you get all the knowledge that you need to affect a positive change on your life, and share this with others. It's free, it's online, and so we're just so thankful that you decided to be a part of our listening community, the viewing community, and we certainly appreciate you for giving us your time of day and your energy and your efforts to being with us and to being a part of this historic event. We have pulled together people of color for you, by you, right? So we want to make sure that you understand that we too, melanated people with color, can enjoy, practice, and participate in some of these modalities that others have been doing for centuries, and that is pretty new to our community. So we talk about Qigong, we talk about meditation, yoga, spiritual work from a different perspective than religion. So we talk about the spirituality aspect. We talk about abuse in the families. We talk about all kinds of subjects because we know that in our communities there are layers and layers and layers and layers of stuff that we never talk about that's causing a negative effect on our bodies and its healing process. So we address it, whatever it is, and we hope that you will benefit from the many experts that we have, and that you walk away with lots of knowledge and lots of new information, and that you become fully empowered to share information with others. So thank you for being with us. We love you and we bless you, and we look forward to doing this again. But thanks for being here with the first one. We appreciate you.
Life, love, and wellness. Life, love, and wellness.
My dad, I have to go back to him because we talked about me being an entrepreneur. I've never had to work a job. I've never had to work a 9 to 5. The few times that I did, it was out of choice because I needed to make money, but I didn't fit. You know, I just never fit into those environments. So eventually I just used my hands, my resources, my creativity to become self-sufficient. But I want to say my dad was an internist and a cardiologist. And in his prime in San Diego, all doctors of all races would consult with him, you know, about cardiology matters of the heart. My dad in his prime was the chief of staff of 2 hospitals, Paradise Valley and Community Hospital. He owned a drug rehab facility. So, but the forgetting in the form of drugs, in the form of white women, hit that segment of the black community, and particularly those black doctors. I watched it. It was like a spell that was being cast over them because most of those doctors ended up being divorced. Some of them lost their practices as a result of their use of drugs, which the kind of drugs they were using were being brought in by the white community. They weren't. I mean, they had access to all kinds of drugs. They weren't using them before. But it was a wave of consciousness that was like a hallucination. It was a bad dream. Anyway, my dad was one of those doctors who didn't lose his license, but lost his Medicaid privileges. Not for selling drugs, but for not thoroughly examining his patients. So he went into retirement for about 10 years and came back out and opened up a clinic for people that didn't have insurance. It was discount medical clinic. And he had that for about 11 years before he totally retired. So he was always a giver. He was always about serving the community, and he instilled that in me. I worked in his office from age 13 to age 22. So my 9 to 5 karma was served during that time. I have a healthy respect for people who have that level of discipline. It's necessary for a society, for a community, for people to be workers. You know. But what are you working on is the question. Do you hate your job? Is it making you sick? Are you working just to pay bills? Is it a means to an end so one day you can have your own? So she talked about, yeah, you can use garlic, you can use lemon instead of salt. Use olive oil. Little did I know that her influence would influence me. Anyway, it's really cool, right? Even with my dad, he had written on the back of a photograph of me when I was like 2. And I was at the beach, and he said, future Meharry graduate. So he had visions of me being a doctor too, but I hated I hated Western medicine because one of the drawbacks was that, you know, we even thought we were going to be sick. They were pumping us up with pills and syrup and needles and So I was driven back to nature to learn about herbs and natural living and things of that nature. Basically from just paying attention to my own body. I had been getting strep throat a lot when I was in middle school. They ended up taking out my tonsils. Shortly after that, I remember having some dairy, some cereal and milk, and I just had all this gooky mucus. And I noticed that every time I had it, I had all this gooky mucus. And I noticed when I didn't eat all that dairy, that didn't have the gookie mucus, you know. So to me, it was a no-brainer. Nobody had to tell me that. My body wisdom was beginning to talk to me at that age. So I started not drinking milk. I started just cutting back on certain things and just not eating as much of it. But I was definitely an omnivore. I ate everything. You know, if it wasn't nailed down, I was willing to try it at least one time. And I never liked chitlins, though. I could never get past the smell. I was not a chitlin eater. But I did love ham hocks and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, even though I went through a period of condemnation of that kind of food and people who ate it, because I did become a vegan snob in my latter food journey, I had to come full circle to recognize that the foods that we ate during slavery sustained us. It was a slave diet. It's what we had. It's all we had. Big Mama, Uncle Joe, Aunt Bessie. They made something out of nothing. They made something out of whatever the scraps were on Massa's table, so that we could work from can't see in the morning to can't see at night. Now they did have fresh herbs. We had fresh water. They had fresh water back then, fresh air. And to do that type of labor, you had to have the food that they say that sticks to your ribs. You had to have it or you pass out. You couldn't survive without it. We didn't have obesity then, though. Yeah, my dad was saying that I was going to be a future Maharite. And, you know, I didn't go into Western medicine at all. I'm a healer. I use food as medicine. And before my dad died at the beginning of this year, in one of our many wonderful conversations we had, I told him, I said, Daddy, you got your wish. I said, I heal food as medicine. And he looked at me, he says, oh, well, isn't that something? I said, yeah. I said, you know, so many times we think a thing has to come a particular way. But when we're open to what God or the universe or the ancestors are showing us, we see it's right before our eyes. It's there. And on that note, I do want to say I'm tearing up because in this moment, because my dad and my stepmom left their bodies on the 4th of January this year. They left on the same day. Yeah. And my mom left in 1996. So she's been gone 18 years. But my dad and my stepmom proved for me the fact that soulmates really do exist and that true love triumphs and transcends all place, space, time, situation, and circumstance. And that what a soul wills, it can accomplish. A little side note for them. Because spirituality is so very much a part of my life. Spirit is everywhere anyway. There's no place it is not. We just acknowledge it in compartments. I am learning to live always connected to it, always aware of it. I'm thankful for that level of consciousness. But my dad and my stepmom started seeing each other when he was still with my mother. But my dad was seeing a lot of women when he was with my mother. So I couldn't hold that against my stepmom. And I didn't even find out until later that they were together, you know, when she and I were talking about some things. And I started putting two and two together. And I was like, oh. But the story that she and my father tell is that they started seeing each other after the divorce. But that was not the case. Anyway, she was 25 years younger than him. She was actually 2 years younger than me. It was a testimony in many ways to the fact that my father, as bougie as he could come across, really loved the beauty of African women because she was a chocolate sister. She had a very short afro, like just, you know how you see some of the sisters with their head shaved. Not totally bald, but it was very low like that. It was never longer than an inch, rarely an inch. That's how I wore my hair back in the days before I locked my head. So, my father always loved when my hair was shaved. He loved that look. He did learn to love my locks, but not until like maybe about 5 years ago. So my journey with my father was an interesting one, to say the least. But my stepmom hung in there. She and my father eventually married. They were together about 40 years, but they were married about 35. And it taught me a lot about relationships, their being together. Because I asked my dad, you know, what made him choose her out of everyone? And he said because she made him laugh. You know, she just had this great sense of humor, and she did. And another thing he said, which endeared me to her, was that he would get so frustrated because he'd give her his credit card to go shop, and she'd come back with sweaters and jeans, and so she wasn't a gold digger. So she and I were always good. Toward the end of their lives, though, he was miserable and didn't want to be here. If he couldn't practice medicine, he didn't want to be here. He was very clear about his life's purpose. And she didn't want to be here because she didn't see herself without him. I really experienced what it was like for a person an adult, to commit their life to someone else through them. My mother had her own life, and although she loved my father and loved us, certainly, my stepmom's life was all about my dad. And you know, it was just a different kind of love, such that they had a euthanasia suicide situation going on, and I don't say that lightly. Their last couple years were very, very hard on everyone, especially on them. I saw the devastation of alcoholism and pills, sleeping pills primarily, you know, and that's what took them out. A broken heart from their lives ending the way that it did. My stepmom not being able to bring joy to my father, because that's what she lived for. Although she had her own job, her everything was about my father. And my father just did not want to be here anymore because he had fulfilled his life's purpose and he wanted out. So as souls, they made that very clear. And so when my stepmom left, we were, at least myself, I was surprised but not, I was surprised, shocked but not surprised. Because she, before I left to come back to Atlanta, she and I had a conversation where she was saying, oh yeah, your dad and I want me to go first. I had to talk him into it, she says, because I really, you know, don't want to be here if he's not here. And, you know, I want to be able to lead first. And I said, well, what if your plan doesn't work? And she says, hadn't thought about that. You know, and she hadn't said what her plan was. So I didn't know that she was serious about leaving the way she did. But, you know, just to keep it on a higher frequency, she had come down with the flu. My dad had been hospitalized a couple of days after I had left town with the flu. He had been heavily sedated because he didn't want to go to the hospital to begin with. Because I think he knew he was going to, in fact, not think, I know he knew he was getting ready to leave. And he would have preferred to leave from the house as opposed to a hospital. So he was fighting the doctors and the nurses, so they just sedated him. So my stepmom just kept saying she had to get some medication so she could just sleep off the flu. And she kept saying, don't call her for a couple of days, because she just wanted to rest. And I said, well, let me call this mutual friend and he'll come and bring you some fresh squeezed juice. And she's like, no, I don't want to see anybody. I just want to, rest. So, not expecting that was her exit time, I said, okay, well, I'll call you in a couple of days. Call me if you need me. So she said, okay. So 2 days later, I got a call from my brother that she was gone. They had gone to the hospital to see my dad, who wasn't conscious because he was sedated. And when they got back, they went to check on her, and she was gone. And that was about 2 in the afternoon, and she left between 10:30 and 11:30. So when my brother called me and told me, like I said, we were shocked, but not surprised. Later that evening, I was talking with my children, my 2 younger children who had come to the house, and we were having a prayer vigil because some of their friends came over to be supportive. And in the meditation, I saw my stepmom. She was a light body. She was outlined like there was neon light around her form. It was a silvery blue. I saw her come, and she appeared really, and she was hovering over my father's bed in the hospital, and I saw her reach her hand out to him, and I saw his etheric body reach his hand up to her, and he started getting up out of his body, and then the vision went away. So I told everybody, I said, Daddy's going to be leaving real soon. I called my brother and I told him. That was maybe around 10 that night, 10 Atlanta time. So I got a call at about 2:30 Atlanta time from my brother. He said, Daddy's gone. My father left at 11:55 that night. My stepmom came and got him. She said, you better come on while this portal is open. And my dad got up and made it through that portal with 5 minutes left to spare. Now you can't tell me that was coincidence in the way we come to think of coincidence. But coincidence really means incidences that are coinciding. That is not a fluke, but it's because the vibrational frequency is in alignment. So, thus my story that soulmates really do exist, because they were truly soulmates. That true love transcends all place, space, time, circumstance, and situation.
That's beautiful.
And that whatever a soul wills, it can accomplish, because neither one of them physically knew that the other had left. So that's the memory that I go with them and the good times. So by the time they left, there was no sadness. It was relief. It was gratitude. It was thankfulness because of all that they gave in their lives. And even the suffering that they went through, it was such a profound lesson of what not to do. I humbly and firmly know that people really do come into our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. They come to teach us what to do as well as what not to do. And either way, we should always thank them. Because the experience with them is a gift. especially if what we think is done to harm us, we can get the pearls in it and the loss, or what we perceive as the loss. When we come to have the overstanding that nothing is ever really lost, because nothing ever really dies, because energy never really dies, and we are made of energy, then what happened was just an experience. And if we can learn from the experience, then it's a lesson. And then in getting the lesson, we can recognize the love that the divine has for us, so that every opportunity we are supported in this life. The divine expressing itself through our ancestors, expressing itself through the trees, the plants, expressing itself through the air, the water, the animals, the insects, each other is our divine reflections. We are loved. We are truly loved beings.